Hi guys, welcome back to SuperSteel Gaming. It's Stellar with you here, and today I want to talk about the best campaign for you if you are a new or returning player. There's been a lot happening this year, so there's a lot to consider if you're trying to start over with a new campaign or, find one for the first time. But first, I want to quickly say if you like this video, hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and leave me a comment down below for more enlisted content. And let me know what you think the best new player campaign is. Also, check out Major McDonald's Discord. I can't say that enough. There's some great community members. They're always talking about Enlisted, and there are also some great content creators in there, including myself. And there's also a lot more to check out and get into. So definitely go check it out. Okay, enlisted can be a bit overwhelming when starting out. Even if you do have a great grasp on World War II history, it tends to make choosing a campaign a bit difficult, and that's what I want to help you with today. Now, I want to start by going through each campaign and just discussing it a little bit. And once we're finished with that, then I want to rank them, just to tell you guys what I think the best one is, what I think the worst one is for you to play as a new player. I'm going to start with the Battle of Berlin. Now, the Battle of Berlin features primarily urban combat, but it also has a little bit of rural industrial combat, such as train stations and bridges. And those are kind of set a little bit outside of Berlin, so you will get a little bit of rural combat around different things, but most of it inside the city is going to be mainly urban combat. Now, it also features a more advanced tech tree than most other campaigns since it is such a late war campaign. But it also has a lot of pros. Yes, one big note, there are a lot of pro level players in this campaign. It's super unbalanced. The Russians totally overpower the Germans. I mean, it's just not even close until you reach the highest German levels where you're able to actually compete, and they didn't even have most of that stuff by then just because it was all destroyed. But the Soviets do tend to have a little bit, less pros overall, so it can help there a little bit, but there's still enough of them that it makes the campaign very intense. And it is a very intense campaign, and you have a lot of the people who play Germany. They tend to come and play Germany because they want to challenge themselves and they want to see if they can beat it, even though they're going up against like way more superior foes and technology. And then you get some of the higher ranking ones and higher leveled ones having it tends to be a little bit more fun by then. But when you're in the lower levels, it can be very difficult. So Berlin's definitely one of the most intense campaigns by far. Now, the next campaign I want to get into is Normandy. Normandy is one of the two original campaigns, and it is well fleshed out. It has received many, many, many new updates over the last year, and it's pretty balanced to me. I mean, it's not necessarily balanced like you would think, but each side has their own advantages and disadvantages, which kind of balances it out. It has a lot of pro players, probably more than most, other than perhaps Berlin. And I would say both Berlin and Normandy have some of the most incredible battles that I've ever played. And that is one thing. There's just something about those two campaigns. They tend to immerse you and you get some crazy combat, like barely holding out or just finally barely breaking through the line and winning. So it's just some incredible stuff. Now, this campaign's beach map, I do believe, is set around Omaha Beach, but I could be wrong since the beach mission is just called D-Day. The terrain you'll be facing is mostly rural combat around buildings such as barns and bunkers, but there are some towns and villages offering some urban combat experiences and opportunities. So that's about it for Normandy. But the thing about Normandy is it's so fleshed out. It has so much in it. As the 38 levels now, and there's just all kinds of stuff with the STG on the German side and the and three different types of Thompsons on the American side. There's just some amazing, amazing stuff in Normandy, and it's one of the coolest campaigns there is. The next campaign we're going to talk about is Tunisia. Now, Tunisia is set in the deserts of course, Tunisia, and you can play as the British Americans against the Germans and Italians, or Germans and Italians against British and Americans. This campaign is interesting when discussing terrain, and that there is some rural combat, but a lot of the maps you fight in more urban conditions. But it's interesting because usually you're surrounded by rural combat zones, but the actual attack points are usually much more urban, so you tend to kind of get a mix. Now, the other thing is that the gameplay is very fun, but it can be very challenging in this campaign because there are some issues. So I would suggest that you check this out, um, because it is a good campaign. I just am going to say that there are some issues with it, but honestly, it is a great campaign. And the cool thing about it is you're going to get to play as if you play British and Americans, you get to use British and American technology. And if you play as the Germans and Italians, you get to use German and Italian technology. So you really get to use four nations technology, which is really, really cool. And other thing about Tunisia is it's basically the most different terrain you're going to get. I mean, all the other campaigns, you may have one that's wintry, one that's more summery, but you're still dealing with urbanish, ruralish, just foresty combat, where this is going to be an actual desert. So there is some really cool things to think about, far as do you like that type of thing. So, very cool campaign. Now, the next campaign I want to talk about is the newest campaign, and that is the Pacific. It's good, but for a newer player, I would be a little bit concerned. Like, you may find it a bit difficult. It takes a little bit of skill to get good at, and there is a lot of good players on it right now. Now, as of this video, it may have changed by the time you're watching or playing the game, but as of this video, the Japanese side of the campaign is completely dead. Very few people play it. So you're only really going to want to play the Americans, in my opinion, if you, especially as a newer player. Now, far as the combat you're going to be facing and the terrain you're going to be facing, you're going to have a lot of up close combat. The main reason I'm emphasizing this statement is because when you do get in battles with a lot of players, you are going to be right up on top of them. This campaign pushes people right up on top of each other. It features jungle combat mixed with urban combat, and that urban combat is really where you're going to get up close stuff. You do have some bunker combat, such as trenches and defenses and things like that you have to work through. It does have some interesting weapons, such as the M13 phosphorus grenade, which puts out white phosphorus gas, which can be very, very lethal. And it has some interesting mechanics, such as this is the first campaign that you can actually take off planes from aircraft carriers, and that's really cool because you can't do that in any other campaign. It can be a little bit annoying, but it is pretty cool. There are rivers you have to cross and fight through, so that's interesting. So there is a water mechanic more than there is in any other campaign, because honestly, I can't think of any other campaign that, other than one map where you really have a lot of water to deal with. It's the newest campaign as of this video. So the cool thing about that is that it should have some big updates coming out. So you may watch this video later and it may now have like 30 levels, because apparently we have 26 levels now, but it's planned to have about 40. So that's going to be very cool. And if you guys have enjoyed this video so far, remember to hit that subscribe button and leave me a comment down below and give me your thoughts on this. The campaign I want to talk about next is Stalingrad. Stalingrad is a completely urban campaign centered around mainly large maps with several different mechanics that are pretty interesting. So we get on the German side a fire cannon. We get on both sides bomber strikes, where basically you can have an artilleryman call in a mass bomber formation to strike a large area. And we also get on the Russian side some Maxim machine guns. So those are some pretty cool things. Now, there are some awesome moments in this campaign, and this campaign does offer the customization of your troops in a way that only this campaign and the Pacific campaign does. And what I mean by that is basically back in the other campaigns like Normandy and Berlin and all the other ones, you can change the appearance a little bit of the face. But in these two campaigns, you can change their outfits a little bit. Now, I know that in Stalingrad, you can basically completely rework the character. I mean, you can get the face, you can get the gloves, you can get everything. So you can change a lot of stuff, and that's super cool. Now, there is a downside to this campaign, because this is the only campaign that there's an all-access pack. Now, the Pacific does have one-ish in the way that technically there is, but it doesn't affect anything other than you just don't get a couple of premium squads. But this campaign, it does affect everything. So the all access pack costs 30 USD, and it gives a 4x multiplier for your XP, 2 premium squads, and unlocks all the levels. So if you do not buy, this will hurt you some, because you won't have them all. So like for example, they're like level 10 is locked. So you still have to work through the level, but you just don't actually get to get the reward at the end of the level, which is okay if you're okay with that, but if you're not, this is probably not the best campaign for you. Finally, I want to discuss the Battle of Moscow. Now, it's actually not the Battle of Moscow in the way that it's not in Moscow. Like, Stalingrad's actually in the city of Stalingrad, but the Battle of Moscow is outside of it. It is a primarily rural campaign, and it has a lot of combat around settlements and, believe it or not, even a castle. It is also set in winter, so there's snow on the ground and some interesting snow effects. It's a pretty balanced campaign, and it's an earlier war campaign, so it's a little less intense. Now, okay, so before we go on, I would just like to say that you should probably still play at least one battle in each campaign so that you get the feel, because it does matter if you like the campaign that you're playing, and even if the campaign that I'm suggesting here is better for you as a newer player, you may not like it. And if you truly don't like it, you may still not want to play the game. So I would suggest that you still get a feel of it and play each campaign at least once so you can at least say you've seen everything. Now, I want to start here. So I want to rank all these campaigns from the worst to the best. So we're going to start here. Number 6 is Berlin. Probably the worst possible campaign for a new player, between the crazy tech to the just complete unbalance and the number of pros. I couldn't ever recommend it to a new player unless that's just the one you wanted to do because that was why you were playing the game. The number 5 is Normandy. Now, it is a little bit less intense, true, but there's a lot of good players with powerful tech, and there are some difficult maps. It's just something you need experience to compete in, especially if you have no previous experience in first-person shooters. So it has to be at the top of this list. I would say that some people probably could get into this campaign and do fine, but there's just so many explosions and there's just so much going on that once again it has to be at the top of this list. Now, number 4 is the Pacific. The Pacific has a lot of different mechanics and is very intense with very up close fighting and hard maps. It's not one you shouldn't try, it's just the one I wouldn't start with. You're going to be facing people who know how to play the game right up close, and that's always going to be harder because when you're not even getting the capability to shoot them at range as much, you're not going to be able to compete. So this is just one that I would definitely try later, just not now. Number 3, guys, is Tunisia, and it is a very good campaign, but it struggles in some manners. So there tends to be a lot of players who really love it, so therefore are really good at it. And there's also some new players, but they have no idea how to play the game. So it's going to be hard as a new player trying to fit into that because you're going to have a situation where you're trying to figure out, okay, how in the world do I compete? I've got really good players and no good allies on my level. So there's not really a strata of different skilled players. And I think that tends to cause a serious issue. It's definitely one, it's still worth trying, but it's one I would wait a little bit on because it can be difficult, so I would wait a little bit on that campaign. Now, guys, the next two campaigns could completely tie, but because of two reasons, I have to say the number 2 spot goes to Stalingrad. The first reason is that the campaign's half dead. There's not as many players on it anymore, and honestly, you could get very good at it and be grinding through players and being at the top of your team, but oh wait, you're not actually grinding through players, you're just grinding through bots. And so though you do kill a lot of bots in all the other campaigns, in this campaign you're going to be killing more and you're probably going to have a lot less players to actually fight against, and therefore you're going to get less experience fighting players. The second reason is the All Access Pack. The All Access Pack is annoying. Any other players that you are on there that have it are going to be able to beat you easily. They're going to have premium squads. They're going to have all the best technology from that campaign unlocked because you have a 4x XP booster and they're going to be able to overwhelm you, not because you're necessarily worse than they are, but because they have better technology. So that's the biggest issue with this campaign. But if you really like Stalingrad and that's something you're super interested in, I would still go with it. And I would still try it, with or without the All Access Pack, because it's still a relatively new player friendly campaign. Because even though there are those people who are going to run over you, there's not as many of them. Not a lot of people bought into this pack. And since there isn't as many people, you can kind of begin to get some experience just playing the game without running into certain more difficult things like explosions and spams and everything else. And finally, at number one, the Battle of Moscow. It is very well fleshed out, being one of the first campaigns. It's balanced, it's not too intense, but it still has epic moments. It's very fun. It's an earlier war campaign, so the weapons don't get quite as crazy as something like Berlin does. It has a lot of things you can do in it, and there's still a lot of players that play this campaign. In fact, the other night I clicked on it and it was instantly found the battle. So it's just crazy. Now, so in conclusion, guys, I would suggest the Battle of Moscow for your first campaign. It's good. It has everything you could ask for in a campaign. It's very enjoyable. There's no real bugs. It's been well fleshed and well fixed and well updated. So I would suggest the Battle of Moscow for a newer player, or if you're a returning player and don't have a lot of experience, you just kind of got on a campaign a while back, I would still suggest this campaign because it's going to get you back up to speed before you go and jump off into other stuff. And it's also not just a good new player campaign, it's also just a very fun campaign in general. Now, I just want to say this. Guys, if I sounded a little bit off in this video in a couple of parts, I actually filmed this different parts of this video at different times, and I actually had a cold during this video, so I was a little bit off, but I want to continue to make content that's better, so I was trying to take a longer time, and I ended up getting a cold during it. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video. If you do like it, give me a subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know your thoughts. Tell me what you think the best campaign for a new player is. See you on the battlefield, soldier. This is Still signing off.